the transracial movement is rising up against intersectionality, it seems, without the permission of intersectionality, even though, of course, it fits perfectly within their ideology. So you, of course, will remember Ollie London, everyone's favourite Korean. Jimin. We're supposed to call him now?
Yeah, I think that's the official name.
Sorry, Jimin, formerly known as Ollie London, everyone's favourite transracial Korean, has been supported by none other than Rachel Dolezal, who was the the transracial employee of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People. And, of course, this was quite strange because she's white, she's of German heritage, and so everyone was like, right, okay, that's weird. And she does as much cosmetically as she can to mimic African-American aesthetics, I think is the nicest way of putting it. And this...
So I have curly hair, therefore I'm black.
And I have lots of like fake tan and...
Yeah, in the same way, Jimin, I've had surgery on my eyes, therefore I'm Korean.
Yes.
Again, biological essentialist there, which is strange.
It is, but the amusing thing is that basically no one on the left really wanted to talk about Rachel Dolezal because, I mean, what are they going to say? Like, well, if you can be a man, why can't you be black? You know.
Well, the response was just, you're not legitimate, but with Jimin.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a question that keeps coming up and will keep coming up. So Rachel Dolezal had a chat with TMZ, and she said she had no problem with Ollie London's decision to identify as Korean after having surgeries. And her point is to live and let live, because what else was she going to say there? I have a problem with him doing this? Of course not. So she of course considers herself to be transracial, and her answer was, doesn't society have bigger fish to fry than someone, whether it be her or Ollie, claiming to be transracial? And the answer is no, they do not. And they don't, because you have hit on the most weak point of intersectional ideology. And if this is allowed to continue, then eventually there will be no racial categories at all. And that's really difficult for those racial activists whose entire activism is focused around their capital B blackness or something like that. This was not well received, obviously, but none of the left have been very fond of this particular group. I guess, can we call them a community? The transracial community?
I hate that term.
I do too, but I think it might apply in the way that they use it for gender and sexuality.
Well,
and all that.
I suppose it actually applies in the case between Ollie and Rachel. Like, that's
because they're the only two.
They're the only two who've also got a connection there. I mean, they've spoken about each other, so that is more of a community than gay guy on the other side of the planet.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I guess another person who's a part of the transracial community is officially Shaun King, at least according to Tamir Rice's mother. Tamir Rice, right? Of all of the cases that Black Lives Matter have, I think is genuinely the most tragic one, because the video is awful. He's just a kid playing outside with a toy gun, and the police car screams up and just jumps and shoots him. He's 12. It's awful.
The context around that, though, makes it obvious that it's not the police officer's fault, and that's why he got off.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know if people know, but the kid had his BB gun. Under law, there's meant to be a little orange bit, so to show that it's a BB gun, not real. He'd taken it off. He was walking around with the gun. He was pointing it at people. So one of the guys he pointed at called the cops and was like, I don't know if it's BB, I don't know if it's real, but you guys should check this out. The dispatch didn't tell the police officer that it might be a BB. So when he turned up, kid pointed the gun, well, kid's getting shot. And that's why he didn't go to jail.
Yeah, but it's the most tragic one, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so Samaria Rice, his mother, last month had made a point to say, look, I've never met Shaun King, even though Shaun King's done an awful lot of fundraising on apparently her behalf.
Shaun King, another guy who's clearly not black, trying to claim to be black.
Yeah, well, Shaun King, again, has German parents. He is of German parentage. What?
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, his parents are all obviously European.
Yeah, I'd want to get away from that ethnic group as well if I were him. So.
Well, yeah, me too, but like the way that Shaun King has introduced himself into the black race is by claiming that his mother is a whore and cheated on his father with a black man. And his mother's like, no, I didn't. Why are you throwing me under the bus? Don't you care about my honour as a good wife and mother? And Shaun's like, no, I'm black. Like, I didn't make this up. This is what he did. So anyway, Samaria Rice says, I ain't never talked to Shaun King a day in my life. Shaun King raised all that money for Tamir and sent me a $60,000 check. I don't know Shaun King from a hole in the wall. So Shaun King raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in this. and she only got $60,000 of that.
Where the rest of the money go?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? That's the question, and it's not sure. It's indeterminate. She has been a critic of social justice activists who she says are chasing clout, and double down on that on Instagram, where she says, "Why do you think it's so important to tell folks we had a conversation?" Before explaining that King is basically trying to attract money for himself rather than for any of the causes, which has been a long-standing criticism of him. She's referring to reports that he allegedly embezzled thousands of dollars by exploiting her son's name, because in 2015, the Washington Post couldn't account for $60,000 in online donations that he'd made to him. She said, "Personally, I don't see how you sleep at night. I never gave you permission to raise nothing." She went on to say her cop and donut conversation with King included all lies from him. Wow. "Please stop thinking we're on the same page. As a white man acting black, you are an imposter that cannot be trusted."
Does that make him officially white?
Everyone can see it, Sean. Like, everyone can see it. She continued saying, "You're a selfish, self-centered person, and God will deal with you, white man."
Capital W there.
Capital W. So he's a politically white man now. D. Ray McKesson, King's former close associate, had also implied that King had stolen money when they were with an organisation, although it has to be said that the families of Nia Wilson, Philando Castile and Terence Crutcher and others have vouched for King, and so they've been on his side. They haven't said that he's black, though. They've just said that he gave them money.
I see the chat saying she should have said, "You ain't black." Would have worked.
Well, I mean, yeah, she basically did. A white man acting black, you're an imposter that can't be trusted. I mean, that's pretty damning condemnation of a race activist.
It's also race phobic of her.
I mean, technically, from a progressive perspective, sure.
Shaun King self-IDs as a black man.
Yeah.
If you're saying he's a white man.
You're transracial phobic.
Yep.
That's correct. But anyway, so what happened in London regarding this? Because we're experiencing the question of transracialism here, aren't we?
Yeah, so I mean, much of this has been a bit of a meme, but one of this has intersected with politics in a way that I find really interesting, and has to raise the question, if we're going to have these categories, I mean, in the liberal perspective, race not important, race doesn't exist, just social construct, in which case, if we stop talking about it, it won't exist. That's the point. But socialists, not happy with that, want different races. Where's the lines? Where's that going to be? Because if Rachel Dolezal can't be black, okay, but how many generations of interbreeding with a black person does her family line have to be before she becomes black? And vice versa.
See, this is just why I hate progressive politics.
It makes no sense.
Well, even if it made sense, I don't want to have to make these sort of calculations when deciding who's a good and bad person.
So this happened with a Labour MP, and it's really strange.
Of course it happened.
So this is the article, The Guardian, leftist outlet. So of course, leftists universally are saying transracialism, not true. You know, Ollie London, not Korean. They're saying Richard Dolezal, not black. What happens when the reverse happens? So the question here, Labour MP Kim Johnson accuses Met of racism after being stopped in London. You can see a picture of her there. Not
Racism against what?
I'm not sure.
She looks Spanish.
So Liverpool MP and family questioned by officers as Scottish supporters celebrated the Euro 2020 match nearby. And not very black. Not
Well, it could be racism against the Mediterraneans.
like, for people listening, her skin tone is maybe a shade darker than, probably about the same as yours, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably about the same as mine.
Yeah, but she has curly hair, so I guess that's the
Yes,
claim.
because no white person has ever had curly hair before.
Except Rachel Dolezal. So she says in here, Johnson, who became Liverpool's first black MP when she was elected in 2019. Stop you there. The Guardian wrote that.
So the Guardian agrees with transracialism.
They're like, this lady, she's a black MP, even though she's as white as any white person.
Good thing you told me, because otherwise I wouldn't have known, Guardian.
And the argument here is presumably the Guardian believes in the one-drop rule, that, you know, one drop of her ancestry was black, and therefore she's black, even though she's white as sin. So, but there we go. I mean, if in the case of Ollie London, left not willing to accept it. In the case of Rachel Dolezal, left not willing to accept it. But in the case of this lady, Kim Johnson, the one-drop rule applies, and therefore they're able to accept that she's black, even though she's clearly not.
I suppose it's technically because there's not one drop of Korean in Ollie London, and not one drop of black in Shaun King and the other.
I don't know about the Korean question, but the one drop of black. I mean, if this is the interesting thing, I looked up the U.S. law in the South of what to do about this, and they had the rule: if there was an identifiable African within your lineage, then you were black. So you had slaves that were clearly not black, but still were slaves because they were African lineage. So if you were able to trace it back, I mean, we all do apparently come from Africa, therefore...
Well, I mean, how far are we tracing this back?
One drop.
Well, then everyone's black by that standard.
Yes. that's the point. So she, her son, and his friend, Guardian writes this, both black men in their 30s. I don't know her colour of her husband, but willing to have it a guess that
Let's
he's
just
not
assume.
the brownest person, and their wives had just stepped out of a taxi to go to a restaurant. When asked why they were being stopped and questioned, Johnson said the police told her that her friend's son, who was wearing a distinctive yellow jacket, fitted a description they had been given. According to Johnson, when she told them that she was an MP, the officers just walked off. Nice privilege you got there.
Yeah.
Just being able to say to the officers, I'm an MP, and they just leave you alone. Suddenly not interested.
I might try that.
As if like white people aren't stopped by the police and then have the ability to just say, "Oh, go away, I'm white." Like that doesn't happen. No, the MP part,
No.
the important thing there. But the question becomes, right? Okay, is this a black person? So if we go to the next link, I mean, just her versus the president of Sudan. She's more white than black. If all of society perceives her that way, how are the police stopping her for racist causes? Like, if they're not able to see her as a black woman, and then they stop her, how can they stop her on the basis of racial discrimination against black people?
Well, I mean, I would suggest they can't.
And it's again with all of society. If all of society perceives her as white and not black, because she's evidently not black, she can argue what she wants about her one drop in her ancestry, but the skin tone speaks for itself. Like, no one's going to perceive that person as a black person in the crowd.
She's got blonde hair, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. So then, that has to raise a question, because the argument from the leftists on Rachel Dolezal is Rachel might be claiming that she's black, but she's never experienced blackness. So this is the argument of being politically black. So you can have an Indian person, we've seen this before, who lives in the UK. The Labour Party still classes them as politically black, even though they're Indian, because they experience racism on the basis of their race, because they're not white. You know, the majority is white, therefore they're getting that racism. In which case, what happens if you take that away? What if you look so white that society doesn't perceive you as black? Then are you black, or are you white?
Well, according to intersectional logic, they would have to agree that this person isn't black.
Because no one perceives her as black.
Because they don't experience blackness.
Mm.
The experience of being black is absent from her life, therefore she can't speak about her lived experience of being racially profiled or discriminated against, because why would you?
Which is why she's trying to claim that the police do it against her because she's black, even though the police, in my guesstimation, probably in agreement with most people that say that doesn't look much like someone from Sudan. Looks far more likely from someone from France. But
yeah,
okay.
I mean, she just looks like a Mediterranean.
So there was a response to this, in which, of course, other Labour
In fact,
MPs...
she looks quite Italian now in that photo.
Yeah, I noticed how there's different photos and all of them are selectively picked, but this person here, I can't remember her name, the Labour MP, saying solidarity with Kim Johnson, a reminder that being an MP doesn't protect you from racism. Racism against what?
Oh, the poor oppressed MPs. Won't someone please think of the MPs in their time of need?
But again, we have to accept that this woman is black, even though she is more white than most white people. And then we have to also accept that Rachel Dolezal is white and not black because she's not experiencing blackness, but this person is, even though they're not black. I mean, what a mess. What an absolute mess transracialism is. And this is why I find this relevant to this topic. Because it's like, well, what do we do now? No one in their right mind sees this person as a black person. I'm sorry if she doesn't like that, but that's the case.
I mean, all I'm put in mind of is the meme where everyone sat around at the desk at the office and everyone's giving stupid suggestions, and one person's like, well, why don't we just not be racist? And then he gets chucked out the window. Yeah.
You're not part of the progressive group.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny thing is, she's actually been asked this question in the past because, of course, a lot of people noticed at the time when she was claiming, I'm the first black MP of Liverpool, and everyone was like, you what? So if we go to the next link here, this is her responding. So someone was pointing this out. So someone responded with, a lot of people in the comments are raising Kim Johnson's blackness, which is not cool. Raising it? Or observing it? Anyway. So Kim Johnson says, yes, as Liverpool's first black MP, pretty fed up of people not being able to see a black woman right in front of them.
But the thing is, apart from that being ridiculous, just having to demand your oppression.
I'm black, damn you!
Oppress me! If you're not being racist towards me, you're being a racist.
So she also admits, the public don't perceive you as black.
Yeah.
In which case you're not experiencing blackness. And then under leftist logic, you aren't black either. Is it just your self-ID that makes this true?
Yeah.
In which case, Rachel Dolezal.
Well, how can you argue? How can you argue? Shaun King, Rachel Dolezal, Ollie London, they're all exactly as they say, if self-ID is the only standard. But again, this
She's
just...
going to fall back on the one-drop rule, in which case, again, Rachel Dolezal, well, all our ancestors are from Africa.
But
so
even
what are you
then,
gonna do?
that's biologically essentialist. And that means that a course of your life is kind of set in stone. You are due to be that thing whether you like it or not. And that's anathema to the left, who want self-identification to be the baseline of everything that happens.
But also the question arises, she's already pretty darn white. If she had, I don't know what her partner or her family are, but if she had a relationship with a even whiter man, and then their child is even whiter than she is that child still black? She's still got the one-drop rule argument, that child.
Well, by that standard, I'm black.
Yes. Enjoy your N-word pass.
I will.
It's just...
I just have to persuade Jack Dorsey that I have an N-word pass.
You know what the funny thing is as well? Like, I looked up before we started this podcast the US legal standard on all this, and there was a section in the PBS article about it, in which there was a conference of what was called the Negro African Writers Guild or whatever in Paris.
Right.
And the American delegation turned up, and the black French guy looked at the American delegation and was like, hang on. You're not very black. How are you black? And the American delegation defended himself on the basis that he was legally black.
I have a black license.
Yeah, I have a black license. Because in the United States,
Right.
I'm legally black, therefore I have the right to be at this conference. And the French guy's just looking at him like, wait. Yeah, what a thing.
God.
So, I have to ask as well, but if she's so adamant that she's black and she's so adamant that she's not white, why? Why is that? What is the thing she's running away from? Why does she not want to be liberated from her chains of blackness and then thrown into the privilege of being white?
Yeah, why doesn't she check into that white privilege? That's a good question. You know, if white privilege is such a boon to people in society and it controls everything about your life, how is it?
Instantly, her life expectancy will go up. Her
everything.
wealth and all the rest of it,
Yeah.
and the way she's treated by the police will suddenly disappear, as she likes to tell
It's
us.
so weird that someone would choose to not embrace this privilege.
It's almost like there is no privilege to be attained, and therefore is not desirable.
But there is a privilege by being an MP. The
And there's
police will just walk off when you've done something.
And there is also a privilege that no one wants to talk about in being black. Everyone knows it, and it's the privilege of being able to pull the race card in British society, as she did when she claimed that the police were stopping her because she black, even though who says that? Look in the mirror. I'm
Even
sorry.
though she knows that nobody thinks she's black.
In fact, she knows it, and it's not just our speculation. As mentioned earlier, she noticed that the public were not calling her black when she was first elected, and was like, look at me, I'm a black woman, even though the public were like, no, you're not. So, I don't know how the police are meant to have a difference of opinion there, either. So, the last thing to mention is just, well, how does this happen? Again, I mean, remember we spoke about Claudia Webb. Turns out Claudia Webb, the lady we spoke about yesterday, shortlist.
Did she get on a shortlist?
She's also a shortlist. So,
She's on a black shortlist.
so I don't know the specifics of this shortlist, but
She
you
might be on a woman's shortlist.
yeah, so the message here, Labour Northwest being like, congratulations to her as being selected for the candidate, and then she got the MP position after she was elected. And she responds with, I am truly overwhelmed and grateful for the amount of support Liverpool Riverside members have given me. Commiserations to the rest of the fantastic women on the shortlist.
Right, so it's an all-woman shortlist. She Jess Phillips her way into...
She's a diversity hire.
Yes.
Just like Claudia Webb, who was a diversity hire.
And now she's an MP, getting paid like 80 grand a year.
Just like Claudia Webb.
Definitely not a privilege. Definitely not a privilege. Definitely oppressed.
Yeah, a oppressed person who got
Yeah.
on the shortlist to be an MP.
Yeah.
Yeah, must be nice. Wonder what the men in the Labour Party of the Northwest think about that. Who cares?
If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.